Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jeffrey Lyles, welcoming you to another edition of Lyles Figure Files. I don't know about you guys, but over the years, I've amassed a ridiculous action figure collection. And a lot of that's due to buying the same character over and over again. And it's not really intentional, it's just sometimes a company makes a figure I really like, and then I buy it, and then another company comes along with its same character, and it's like, well, this is slightly different, and I need it for this format with my other figures, so I'm gonna buy it here. And then another time, oh yeah, I gotta get it to go along with this line too. And so over the years, I have way too many of the same character, and I decided, why don't I make a feature on that to determine which is the definitive version of some of my characters that are repeated throughout multiple lines. And I decided, since this year marks the 30th anniversary of the death of Superman, why not start with one of the characters very essential to a follow-up to that storyline, the reign of the Supermen, and I'm talking about Cyborg Superman. Cyborg Superman was the main villain of that arc. Really great character, had a real motivation to get revenge, to damage and tarnish the legacy of Superman, even if he weren't around and still alive to see it. I love the character. I love the reign of the Supermen. It is such a great storyline to me because it shows that no one can replace Superman. So, of course, because I love this storyline so much, I have grabbed multiple versions of all the characters, including Cyborg Superman. I just decided today would be the time to break him down and to figure out which one is the end-all be-all in my collection. Now, one quick caveat to this. I have two. I'm definitely going to add a third one. And I know which one that third one is. I'm going to look at 4 versions of Cyborg Superman. And I'm only going to focus on his reign of the Superman look. So DC Classics and DC Direct both made a version of Cyborg Superman in his Sinestro Corps gear. I won't tackle that right now, so I'm just going to focus on the traditional red, blue, and metallic version of the character. Alright, so what are the competitors in this ultimate decision? So first up, it's the DC Classics version. This is the 4 Horsemen sculpted retail line figure. That's important to note because the rest of them are not necessarily figures you could have picked up at Toys R Us, Walmart, Target. This is a figure that you could get at all these places, including online, and Mattel.com, and Shop Mattel, and MattyCollector.com, the nightmare-inducing site where you could get your white screen of death and all those DC Classics figures. So we've got that one. Next up is the DC Direct figure. That one was basically exclusive to comic book shops. Maybe you could order from some retailers like Big Bad Toy Store and Entertainment Earth. I got mine from the comic book store, so I don't really know how other people bought them. But that one is the second one that I'm going to tackle. Next up is the DC Essentials figure. Again, a retailer, kind of exclusive. You get it at comic book shops, you can get it online, but you weren't going to find it at the Targets and Walmarts in your area. And finally, this one's still to come. It's the MAFEX Reign of the Superman Cyborg Superman figure. Now, that's the one I'm going to get. I don't have the DC Essentials version, but I'll explain that as I break this down. So those are the 4 competitors in this contest. We'll see which one is the definitive version of the Cyborg Superman. So I have 4 categories I want to take a look at because I figured that would be a fair way to look at these characters, or all these different versions of Cyborg Superman. First up is the likeness to the comic book. And that's important because I don't want the shortcuts, the short changes, this is good enough. I want it to look like how he did in Reign of the Superman. That was the peak of him in this look, and that's the version I want. And I want that version that Dan Jurgens drew and put him right up here in my action figure shelf. Next up is the articulation. For me, that is one of the most important parts of any action figure, because you can look cool all you want, but I need to be able to pose and maneuver the figure to hit all those great poses that I saw in the comic books. And if I can do that, I am great. So got that. Next up is accessories. Now this one is of course self-explanatory. It's the case of what goodies, what extras does this figure have? And this one is going to be a really tricky one with this figure in particular. And last but not least is the price. Because I mentioned before, most of these figures, or most of these different versions of the character, are not stuff you can buy at Target, Walmart, or your local comic book store now. Maybe you can get the Essentials one, and the MAFEX one still coming, so of course you can pre-order that now. But those prices are going to vary between all these characters, and it's just going to be a case of which one's the better value for your price. Alright, so let's take a look at all these different versions of Cyborg Superman. So let's start off with the DC Classics version. Now this guy, I think they did a really good job, the Four Horsemen, capturing the essence of the comic book look. So he's got that Terminator skull going here. That's important. The hairline on the right side is higher than the left side, which is very important because it's not a symmetrical look with this. And that's really great. They captured that. And they've got most of the detailing for a 6-inch retail figure. They really nailed a lot of the important elements to the sculpt, the design. There are a few parts that are different. There should be like a mechanical section here with a visible see-through area. So it's not a perfectly straight arm. They did a pretty decent job, but it's not quite there. There's a missing element here with another kind of cybernetic part there as well. The knee thigh area should have a hole through it. And I guess with a retail figure, having bendable knees would kind of mess up that area. But I thought he overall is a really good figure, especially when you were getting him for less than $20 at the time. He's really good. I think he matches up really well. Only problem, of course, is he doesn't stand really well because he's got that wide split that a lot of DC Classic figures had over the years. But I think just in terms of the likeness to the sculpt or to the source material, it's a really good job considering he's a retail figure. Now we move on to the DC Direct one. And I don't think on this one, this is definitively the most accurate version you can get of the comic book look. I mean, everything is perfectly rendered. They've got that amazing head sculpt that they did before the DC Direct Basic Superman. They applied it just so, and it really matches up really nicely to that Superman. And then it's got all the cybernetic parts, the Terminator head, the skull showing through. Really nice job. It's got that visible section in the arm, so you can see the more the inner working of the mechanics. That's really cool. The side portion here is dead on to how Dan Jurgens drew it. The leg also has that hole. That's a really nice deal. And then in the back, of course, we've got that. And then we've even got the S that's painted properly with that darkened right side. Yes, right side. And that's kind of foreshadowing that this is a darker version of Superman and the tease of what's to come with the big reveal of this character. But I love everything about this. They even got the rib area a little bit shorter, cut in a little bit so it's not symmetrical with his waist like some of the other figures. That's a really nice touch. Again, also super accurate to the comic itself. The DC Direct version just blows everybody out of the water. No question on that likeness. Next up is the DC Essentials figure. And this one is the exact opposite. You can tell, you can see DC Collectibles, DC Direct was trying to make a good use out of the Essentials Superman and just kind of let's slap together parts of Cyborg Superman and hope people don't really notice. But there's just so many elements with this character that's wrong. The hairline, it's just wrong. I mean, we've got the full head of hair showing up, and it's kind of got this thing of like the skin is peeling. That's not quite how Cyborg Superman looked, of course. I mean, it was I've been severely wounded by Doomsday, and it's not a thing of Superman was a cyborg and the skin is peeling. So it's just, it misses the whole mark of what this look should have. The S is more ripped along the shirt, and it's just kind of weird. So again, it's not a full transformation. Like the Cyborg Superman is incorporating metallic elements into the basic Superman body. The whole deal is, oh yeah, I use these parts from my Kryptonian chip to fix my body, and this is why I've got all these metallic elements. This one definitely gets that feel more of a horror, like, oh, Superman was always a robot and they're just peeling away, kind of like Faker from the Masters of the Universe, where it's not, they didn't really get the point of Cyborg Superman's look really well at all. And there's all the compromises on the the right leg. There's no paneling. I mean, the DC Classics version had that panel here. The DC Direct had both of them, and the DC Essentials figure has none of them. So there are too many shortcuts with this figure to really give it a strong recommendation. It just doesn't match the source material well at all. It's just kind of really confusing that they thought that was good enough to put out in terms of being an accurate version of Cyborg Superman. Now I'm really intrigued with the MAFEX version, because this one really gets that flair for the comic book. They even got the blue and the black hair to get that comic book style mashed up in there properly. The 12-inch version of the DC Classics figure actually has that. I was checking to see if this one did, but it doesn't. But the cloth cape, I love those when it works properly, so you can bunch it up and get some really great poses out of it. It looks like there may be a section for that hole in the leg. If so, that would be a really nice addition to this figure. I can tell that the right arm is missing that see-through cutout section, and I'm not sure if that's because of some standards that they couldn't do it properly, or if the scale, whatever. It's not quite accurate, and it's missing that forked section on that right boot. They have the cybernetic part there, which is good, but it's not quite as accurate as the comic book. So going off on this one, to me, this is an easy one. The DC Direct figure has the most accurate likeness and really sets the standard for everybody else. It's one of the main reasons I have this figure still in my collection. It looks just like what Dan Jurgens put out, and it's a phenomenal looking figure. So next up, let's go to Articulation. And the DC Classics figure is basically what you expect from this line. It's going to feel a little bit dated now because these figures were out in 2008, 2006. So, I mean, it's like it's got the basics. Got the ankle articulation, not double, but single jointed knees, hip articulation, and the hinge hip. That was kind of neat back in the day, but again, it feels kind of old now. Single jointed elbow, no wrist articulation, ball jointed shoulders, and it's got your waist articulation, your torso articulation. Head doesn't go up very far. It's okay. It's like, all right, well, this is good enough. And for me, that was solid for a DC Classics figure. You can do some stuff with him. You can pose him around a little bit, but he's not the most dynamic of all the action figures you can pose. The DC Direct one, this is where it suffers the most, because it's got the articulation basically like that DC Essentials or DC Classics version. It's got the single jointed elbows. It's got a swivel at the biceps, so not the typical bicep joint. No waist articulation, which is interesting. Hip goes up here, single jointed, knees, elbows, ankle articulation. The head does go up pretty far, so you can get some really nice flying poses. So that's really nice. This figure is not the one you're going to be posing and getting great action shots with. This is more of the museum quality figure. Now, the DC Essentials version actually does show up pretty well in this category, because the Essentials mold, that body was really well articulated. And I thought that was the biggest plus with that figure, because you could move him and pose all the DC Essential characters really well. And, if you don't get the great likeness, if you don't have the proper reference to the source material, at least you could pose this figure really, really well. And so that one is good on that case. But I think, this is just based off of getting other MAFEX figures, that the MAFEX figure is going to be the superior winner in this category, largely because it doesn't have the pesky DC Essentials ankle articulation. And all the DC MAFEX figures I've gotten have been really fun to pose and maneuver, and I think that's going to be the case with this guy. And the shots that MAFEX has shown, he hit some really nice poses, including that flying one where he's like heading off maybe to see what's going on in Coast City with the Eradicator close by, and lots of cool stuff. So I think he's gonna win this Articulation one. So it was close with him in the Essentials figure, but MAFEX is gonna win and take the edge on this one. And for accessories, this one's kind of tricky because no figure really has anything. The DC Direct figure had a stand. That was okay. Not really thinking, hey, this guy should have a ton of accessories. MAFEX did decide to include an arm cannon, which I looked around for a minute trying to find a reference to this cannon in the comics. I couldn't find one that matched that up properly. He had like a gun which he was using to shoot people. So I wish they had kind of done a more streamlined arm cannon instead of this big one. I guess it's alright, even though it's not accurate. Comes with 2 energy effects, so you can get that whole shooting Eradicator in the back, fighting Steel, fighting Superboy. But because it's the only one with accessories, MAFEX gets another point in this category. Alright, so then let's go on to the price. Now this is the price. This is the one I think is going to be really interesting because most of these guys are out of circulation. And, you know, you're going to pay a lot more for figures that you can't buy easily at your local comic store. The DC Classics figure is by far the best value because you can get it on eBay, mint on card, loose, for about $30 to $40. And I think that's fair. He's a figure that I think works well if you just want to complete your collection and get some more figures, round them up. I think he does a really nice job on that front. I don't think he's worth $30, of course, because I don't think modern 6-inch figures are worth $30. But if you needed to fill your ranks with your collection, tracking down a figure that was made back in 2008, that's a pretty good figure. The DC Direct figure is going to seriously cost you. You're going to pay about $150 to $185 to get this guy mint. If you get him loose, you may be able to get him for $80, but I gotta say, at $185, this sucker needs to be 12 inches and a Hot Toys figure. So if you've missed out on him, I don't necessarily think you should. Again, the articulation is so limited, and based on expectations you may have of modern figures, his articulation is going to be really disappointing to you. But unless you want a museum quality figure, maybe it works. The DC Essentials figure was surprisingly, I won't say just as expensive, but way more expensive than I figured, especially for a figure that was so lackluster in its appearance. He's clocking in about $85 to $110. And I definitely do not think that figure is worth it at all because it's not accurate to the comic book and come with any cool accessories. And it's not like you can get more DC Essential figures to add to that collection. And since that line is done, there's no Eradicator, there's no Steel, there's no Superboy to match up with him. Yeah, we have a recovery suit Superman, but that figure's wrong too. There's no mullet. I don't know how that went through, but yeah, so we're missing 3 core characters to pit him up against. So it kind of defeats the purpose of having a Cyborg Superman from DC Essentials. So he's just not worth paying $110 for. MAFEX, their figure is coming out and pre-orders have it for about $104. So with tax, it's probably going to be $110. And I think considering the fact that they've already shown Steel, that means we've only got Eradicator and Superboy coming. They're pretty good about knocking out lines and waves. I mean, we've seen so many characters from Hush at this point. A lot of Dark Knight Returns characters. So I got a safe assumption. I'm feeling pretty optimistic we're going to get more. I've also got the recovery suit Superman already. Got that figure right in the distance to review anyway. So we've got 2. Steel's coming. We're getting there. And I feel really confident that they'll do a nice job. So, again, in terms of that value, I think if you just wanted to have a figure of Cyborg Superman, DC Classics stands out with $30. It's the best price point for all these. The DC Direct is way too expensive now. It's just, if you can get it for $80, I think it's worth that price because it is a phenomenal looking figure. The DC Essentials, don't bother. It's way too expensive. The MAFEX, I mean, if you haven't gotten a figure, if you haven't gotten one of these guys yet, I mean, for 110, you're not missing out on anything, and you get a good likeness, and you get a pretty solid Cyborg Superman figure. All right, so that said, which figure is the definitive Cyborg Superman? For me, if I've got my museum layout, I'm not posing anybody anything special or anything, this is the champ. I mean, there's just no way to deny everything about this figure. From the head sculpt, the colors, they pop, got the S in the back, all the proper detailing on the arm and cybernetic pieces. It's just a big win for me on that end. I have it, so I'm really happy, but I don't know if I would be as happy paying $200 for this guy. I gotta think that if you don't have this figure already, if you're looking, hey, I need to get one, the MAFEX Cyborg Superman looks like it's going to be the best option. The price point is better than the DC Direct figure. You get a better likeness, more accessories, and better scaling than the DC Essentials figure. Better likeness, of course. And I just think it's already got complementary figures to go alongside with it. So in a pinch, I'm going to go with the MAFEX figure. That's the one to get. So if you haven't gotten any of these Reign of Superman figures, Recovery Suit Superman is still available. Cyborg Superman is coming. Steel is not too far around the corner. But I think that is the way to go with that. So if you have them, I think this is the winner without question. Even though the articulation isn't as great as I would like. But without it and getting a figure now, I think that MAFEX is going to be the one to get. That's going to be the figure that you're going to be most happy with. You got the cape that you can move around and do all kinds of cool stuff with. And I think that really helps set it apart from the other ones. So let me know what you think about this. You want to see me break down some more figures, match them up against each other, figure out which one I think is best, go through their highs and lows and all that good stuff. And if you do, let me know which characters, what figures you want me to break down. I think it'll be a lot of fun seeing what you guys come up with and your suggestions on that front. As always, thank you so much for watching. This episode of Lyle's Figure Files has been filed.